All right. Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Performance Analytics Office Hours. My name is Tom Pasek. I'm a technical product marketing manager here at ServiceNow. I'm going to take just a couple minutes to kick things off for those of you who are new, so you get a lay of the land here, and then we'll jump into today's session. So first of all, the format for these sessions are we usually kick off with a presentation from our own internal team. So we have our inbound and outbound product managers jumping on and donating their time to go through what's new, do deep dives on particular topics. You know, ultimately these sessions are for you, our customers and partners. So we'd love to hear if there's topics that you'd love to hear more about, or you feel like we're not covering in these sessions. Let us know in the community forum, give us that feedback, and we'll try and get those onto the schedule. After the presentation, we'll go into a open Q&A forum. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and get those into the Q&A capability within Zoom. You can also use the text chat, but Q&A allows us to track all the responses, make sure we're getting to all the questions a little easier. There may be cases where we ask you to go off mute if we need some clarification on a particular question, but otherwise you should all be muted to minimize some of the distractions going on. And there may be cases where with some of your questions, we just can't get into too many specifics with your particular instance on this call. So we might ask you to raise an incident on high and we'll follow up with you offline to try and get that addressed. We do record all of these sessions. Speaking of which, you can find links to all of the previous sessions on the community. There's also a bit.ly link there, a little bit of a shortcut to get to all of these previous sessions. So you can go through and replay those. They're all available off YouTube. So if you ever miss a session, just know you can always go back and reference those later. One last thing that I want to call out on my end. Today, we made the Orlando release generally available to everyone. And next Thursday, we'll actually have a broadcast event that's going to go through and highlight all of the new innovations. So there'll be a keynote session, which is kind of covers the release as a whole. And then there'll be individual spotlight sessions or breakouts that are focused on particular parts and different applications. So for example, there'll be an ITSM focus session. There'll also be a Now Platform section. So the performance analytics content is going to fall into that Now Platform spotlight if that's what you're interested in. You'll get to hear more of me during that session. I'm the one who will be delivering that. So hopefully you can join us. You can find the link to register for the webinar on the servicenow.com website, along with a lot of material about what's new across Orlando on all of the different applications. You also find a lot of updated web pages and information, new demos available to go through and watch on there. So be sure to check that out. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patty, who's going to walk us through some of the enhancements that we've made in Orlando to our content packs, as far as new content that we've added or improvements we've made to existing ones. So over to you, Patty.
Thanks, Tom. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I'm going to go through some of the content that we've made updates, and there's some new content that we have as of Orlando. And then I'll go through as well as where you can find some of this content in terms of our documentation that goes into more detail of what's included in the content. And then I'll demo, I'll go through what one of our new dashboards that you can find are available in Orlando. So across the different applications, we did release in the store, you can find legal, there's a council workspace and a legal operations dashboard. These are actually these are not yet, these are not yet, they're currently right now hidden. You can find the legal operations dashboard, but the council workspace is still not yet available in the store. It will be available soon. And then in terms of HR, we did make some updates to the source tables of a couple of the reports in the HR employee documents. And we added a new indicator on the campaign analytics dashboard, which is targeted more on how to really measure the impact of your campaigns to see if it's successful or not. And And then in CSM, we made some updates to the proactive dashboard, including some KPIs related to outage. I'm going to be demoing operational dashboard that leverages reporting in real time for advanced work assignment. But for that one, we launched earlier, like in Madrid, we have a version that has PA components. And then we made updates in New York to the advanced work assignment dashboard with PA specific components related to interactions and tasks. I won't go through all of these, but these are some of the content updates that you'll find related to each of the different applications. So now in terms of how you can actually find it, we have some new ways of documentation to make it easier to find this content. We have a KPI list. So if you're wanting to know like all the different indicators for a particular plugin or a particular application like AWA, you can go to the KPI list and it'll give you all the list of indicators that are included in that content pack. As well as there is a way to, if you search for new and change analytics and reporting solutions, that will give you, only the list of updates that we made in Orlando. Versus if you go to analytics and reporting solutions, it gives you all the different content packs that we have across the prior releases that we did. And then another way that you can also search for the particular content pack that you're interested in is if you go to the specific application like advanced work assignment, you would also be able to find in the release notes if there was a dashboard that was included. So I'm going to kind of show you in our documentation site how you would look for these. Okay, so for the, if you search for new and changed analytics in terms of searching documents, you would find this site where you can actually see, like how I was referring to the update we made for the campaign dashboard, the proactive customer service operation dashboard, and each of these would have links going to specifically in more detail to what those updates were. That would be one way. You could also just go to the available analytics and reporting solutions, this tab, which would include all the plugins in terms of the out-of-the-box content packs that we have out there. And then the other one was the KPI list, which I just realized I have the staging version, but here you would also have, you can, in terms of like if I was interested in all the indicators that are available in advanced work assignment, I can click on here and it would take me to the list of all those indicators and what version they were introduced. Then the last one that I like to also search through is if you go to a specific advanced work assignment, you can look at the specific application, like advanced work assignment. You can look at the release notes and see and find what was new in that release. So here you'll see the advanced work assignment dashboard for operations, which is the one that I will be demoing. And then it goes into more detail to specifically what was included in that dashboard, the type of reports that you would find, and the use cases. Okay, so in Orlando, a new dashboard that we included is the AWA Operations Dashboard. Like I mentioned, we do already have 2 other advanced dashboards that do leverage performance analytics for that trending capability. This is more for the use case of like we're wanting to see in real time in that moment. This serves for the 2 personas, the queue manager or the team manager, as well as the channel owner. And so all of these are reporting, and in the first tab, it gives you an overview of just a better understanding to what's the incoming work items and the availability of agents to handle those work items. And then as well as what the wait time is, so that the queue manager or the team manager can have an idea of how to change their resources in order to fit the needs of those work assignments that are in the queue. Then each tab is tied more to that specific persona. So we have a tab on queue manager and then one specific for the team manager and channel owner. Before we go to the next one, if you scroll down on the overview page, there is a list of, in terms of the agents that are currently present and have capacity. So you would be able to see what their current capacity is, how much capacity they currently have in use, in order to see where you can make some changes to the work items assigned to them. The Queue Manager tab allows the Queue Manager to be able to filter by the different queues. By default, the queues that will be selected will be the ones that pertain to that Queue Manager. So when you log in, it will default to the selected ones that are already part of your queue. But then you can unselect those if you're interested in looking at at some other queues. You get a similar layout in terms of the overview. You have similar metrics in terms of how many agents are available, and then broken down by what areas they're currently in terms of like the product support or billing support. And then you also see some metrics on the work items. So like what the average wait time is, how many have been actually rejected today, which ones were how many were timed out, how many were timed out, and then how many agents are currently present within these queues and their current capacity. The team manager has also a similar view, but they also get to see how many work items are pending in terms of being accepted, as well as they also get to filter it by the specific AWA groups. So, and these are also like pre-selected by which groups they belong to, but then they can filter and look at other groups that they're interested in looking at in terms of what the status is of those work items. You can also see for the team manager, if you scroll down on this tab, besides looking at the agent presence and capacity, they can see which queues are associated with their teams. And then the last tab is the channel owner, and they get to filter by a specific channel, getting the same type of metrics, similar type of metrics as well in terms of the work items that are still waiting in the queue. And then here, if you filter down, they get to see specifically what queues are associated with those channels. So this dashboard overall is going to help in terms of the action item it gives to the managers, helps them really be able to monitor in real time to the advanced work assignment metrics in order for them to determine if they need to make adjustments, so they can either change the routing criteria or look at better at what the agent capacity value is at the moment. And other settings in order to really be able to determine how the work items need to be pushed to the agents. And that's it from my demo. Any questions?
So we do have one question that came in.
Yeah.
About some of these. I don't know if you know the details of all the content packs, because we have quite a few of them now. Do we know if there is a content pack for configuration compliance, for configuration compliance?
I don't know about that one.
Okay, and I believe in the documentation, we should see the content packs listed underneath the application or adjacent to that application. So if you're looking for CSM, go to CSM. If you're looking for SecOps,
Yes.
go to SecOps. So what's there should be there. You can browse the full list as well, but generally you should see the related content packs in that section of the documentation for that application. As far as future goes, when they get released, they get released. If there is something you were looking for, I would recommend putting it in the idea portal for dashboards. I believe each of the applications has it in there. So make sure that it's clear what the usage should be. But the content packs themselves are sponsored by the BUs. They build them with the application, so it's part of the application that goes out. So those of us on this call don't necessarily know what they're planning in the future releases. It's like we can't speak to their features. But if you're connected to to those BUs, to those product managers, their packs. They probably have some insight, but they don't tell me anything. Okay, and then related to it, are there new SecOp dashboards? That I actually do know. There are generally new dashboards each release for SecOps. They're very active in creating those. Patty, do you know if,
Yeah, I'm going to the slide to see. I don't know. I don't work on those, but I think these are the ones that were, yeah, these were the ones that were released for SecOps, which was one for GRC, two for GRC, SOX compliance, and then advanced risk update, I think.
Okay, I believe that all of the SecOps and GRC dashboards are, oh yeah, they're released in the store, so
Yeah.
they're released more frequently than our major releases. So there have been some since between New York and Orlando. I think there have been updates, and the same thing before Paris. You'll see other updates that come out. Be aware that with the updates of analytics, if you are updating a dashboard, there's some challenges isn't the right word, but there are some challenges that comes through in that the content won't necessarily update. So we don't change your analytics out from underneath you. So if you're using a dashboard, we don't change it. We'll give you the new things, but we don't change what you are seeing, particularly if you've made other changes. But even if it's still out of the box, we don't change it because we understand you rely on that. So what I would suggest doing when you find a dashboard that's been updated, you see it in the release notes, you'll see in the release notes that this dashboard's been updated. Go get a personal developer instance, install it there, install your app, install it there, and look and see what's there to really get into it if you want to see it. Any new changes we make, any new content packs, any changes to existing ones, you should see the documentation updated as well, and you'll see the dashboard, you'll see the indicators, you'll see everything that's in it. If you want some of those features, you might need to go get them from the install it on developer instance. You can grab the XML, you can grab the records and install them. It also might be available in the not Solution Center.
Solution library?
Solution library, thank you. In the solution library to upgrade it as well. But if you see an update, make sure you can go and look and see what it is. And if you want to apply it. SecOps specifically, I know has some updates that have come out recently for vulnerabilities, and they have to do with, there's some performance improvements, but there are some changes that you'd have to look at to see. We're working on how do we improve that process, how do we improve that documentation. But for now, today, if these are one of the dashboards you're using and it's been updated and you've already installed it, you'll want to go take a look and see what's new and then how you can apply that yourself. Anything that's net new, a new content pack, that's great. Just try it out. Take a look at it, see what's there. But the upgrades are a little, because we do not want to change your analytics underneath you while you're looking at them when you press an upgrade button. There's a lot of complications in that. It's not as simple as just a skip step in a normal upgrade. Okay, Chris, I hope that answered your question as much as I didn't answer your question. Anything else about the content packs and solutions? I will just plug it because I think it is really important. Whenever you are starting any new project out there, make sure you go look and see what's already out there out of box. Even if it's not perfect, our goal is that it's getting you 95% of the way there, maybe 100% of there. A lot of the stuff is really, really good. But even if it gets you 50% there, that's a big time savings. So make sure that whenever you're working in any of these new areas, go install the content pack, at least on a developer instance, take a look at it, ask some questions about why we do things. But these are not created just by our analytics team, but they're created by the application teams. They're producing the applications, the workflows, the analytics that go with it. And the goal is that this should be really valuable for you. So just like you wouldn't build everything from scratch and create your own business rules and your own workflows, you start with the app and maybe customize, make sure you're treating the content packs the same way. Okay, so a question came in. Are we planning easy upgrades for the future? It's Eric on here. I'll make him answer that. He's not today. Yes, I mean, it is something that we are always, we are very actively looking at. How do we make the experience better? how do we make it better and smoother, but yet give you all the options you need? That is the challenge we always have. The solution library is the best option at this point. It's not available for all upgrades, but we're working on that. But every release we're trying to make the experience better for you so that you can get the new analytics. But if there's something you like, we don't want to force you to take a change. And the biggest challenge we have, which I imagine most of us on this call can relate to, is that we're PA admins, we're report admins, we're dashboard admins, but we're not admin admins. We don't do the update itself. We don't do the upgrade itself. And that's the challenge. The admins don't necessarily know what we want to skip and what we don't want to skip. Your process owner might know, but that we're very different than the rest of the platform that is just simply upgrading. Okay, hopefully that answered your question, Jack, but that is something it's definitely top of mind in many of our discussions in every release. How do we make it better? And we're working on that. There's some good things happening over the next few releases. But today you can do it, but there's some challenges on what you want to do because you're going to have to manually make some decisions. Another question came in about historical collection from audit. We would generally discourage it. I certainly would never do a collection on audit because the biggest challenge we have is that you would have to script it, or the audit's not going forward very well. Performance of audit, even reporting on audit is really bad. I have on really, really, really stressful occasions reported off of metrics, the metrics table. And I have used the audit to build metrics and then created records on metrics. The biggest challenge you have is that the data, if you script off of metrics and you write a script, you have to script every indicator, every breakdown, and then you have to unscript it. So it's pretty complicated to do it. I've done it very, very few times. Generally, by the time that I got it all working and all tested, I would have, it's been a couple weeks, it might have been a month or two, and my history is going forward. It's good. So I generally don't do it. In a content pack, I would really be hard pressed to say I would do it. I would just turn it on, and as we're looking at it, we've collected enough history to go forward. So the recommendation is just go forward. If it is historically possible to collect, there should be a historic job with the PA content. But some data is, some data is not, as you know, with the audit. If I was looking at states, we wouldn't collect that historically. But again, it loses value. The history loses value every day you go forward. So if there's a historic job, go ahead and run it, 60, 90 days. If, that's the challenge. Like I said, I have done a valid historical collection, but it is such a nightmare to do. I highly discourage it.
I do think, Adam, that it's a good topic maybe to some point address, and also like a sort of a good practice how to use metrics to work for you. Because even if you're not able to do it, let's say from the past data, it would be good to let folks know how we would, let's say, advise it to do it moving forward, right? So that you have a starting point. So I'll add it to our to-do list.
And that being said, the common request is how do I get an accurate historical collection? I can do something like the incident counts, my incident backlog. I can do a fairly accurate incident historical collection, but I can't get the states of where they're at. That being said, that's a very valid request. It is something we're working on. There are things in place right now. The biggest challenge we have is how do we do it in a performant way. It is something we are very actively working on. I can't say when it'll be done. I can't say what's going to happen, but we are working on it. And how do we make it smoother? So when you want to do it, you can do it. The way you do it today, it's messy. So we'll look at it. But when the content packs come out, if it is historically safe to do, it's there, and most of the indicators will be there. So it won't be all the data, but it'll be a good chunk of the data. If I did the incident one, I think I'm going to get everything but states. So I certainly would use what is there today in the content pack if there is a historical collection. If there's not, it could be something like transactions. It could be something that's purged and there is no history. But if there is a history, it is something we think about with the content packs on what can we collect and get. My recommendation is if it's there, use it. If it's not there, it's probably not there for a reason, and we're actively working on how to make it less painful. And again, with the general content pack, I'd have a hard time saying I was going to do it because I'm going to invest a good amount of time in writing it and scripting it and testing it, then running it, which might have some performance issues while it's running, which can be mitigated. I'm going to run on the weekend. I'll probably be okay. But then I have to undo it all to go straight back to what's in the content pack. So it can be done, but it's rather challenging today. Okay, any other questions about content packs? It sounds like we probably want to do a session on upgrading, how to upgrade and the historical collection going forward. So we will put that on the list. Right now, I believe we have planned out up through knowledge, and then we'll look and see if we can add something like that before. That's probably a good topic for us to get everybody's feet wet in the best practices for upgrades. All right, if we don't have any other questions about content packs, we'll open up to any questions you have about life, reporting, PA, whatever strikes your fancy. Apparently we're doing a great job in the community and everybody's questions are answered. So we can stay on for another minute or two if anybody has any questions, if they're typing. If not, we can wrap up a bit early this week. I believe the topic for 2 weeks from now, so next week we have the Orlando release. Tom's has the focus session on PAR, on Now Intelligence upgrades, and in 2 weeks our next office hours I believe is on the new features. So some interesting stuff is available to you. So we're going to show you how to use some of the new features that are in Orlando that you have access to as of today.
Yep, I'll also plug there's a post in the community forum that should detail out kind of some of the highlights of what's new in performance analytics. So take a look at that thread.
Take a look at it. Make sure you come prepared for some questions in a couple weeks. There are some features in Orlando that you have been asking for many years. So it's a great release. I mean, there's the dynamic, the personalized widgets is going to be pretty awesome. So we will definitely go over that in 2 weeks, so you guys can hit the ground running with Orlando.
Yeah, Adam, it looks like we had one more question come in about how do we collect the historic data through the jobs from Caitlin.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. The historic data. So when we ship, there's two things that we can look at for this. If we are, if it's a content pack that you're installing, there should be at least two jobs that come with it. One will be generally speaking, one will be the daily collector and one will be marked as a historical collection, the historic collector. If you have a historic collector, it's going to be turned off. They're probably both turned off at this point. You'll just want to schedule it for a one-time run for 60 days, 90 days. You can run longer than that, and I understand why sometimes you would, but you can set it to what makes sense to you. Definitely run it. When you do run a historic collection, it is the number of periods you're looking for. So assuming it's a daily indicator, whatever it takes to run daily, if you run that for 30 days, it will take 30 times longer. It's a linear process. So if you're collecting for 2 years, the daily retention is only retained for 2 years. So you can collect for 2 years, and tomorrow we're going to purge that last day. So even if I did a year, it will take 365 times longer to run. So if your job runs for a minute, make sure you're planning for 6 hours for that run. If your job runs for 20 minutes, you're going to need to plan out when you're doing that historic collection. You may end up breaking it apart and doing fixed dates. So I'll do a month each weekend, whatever makes sense timing wise. So make sure you do test it on a relative subprod, but it should be there. If not, the historic collections, it's a little bit more in depth than we can go into right now. We did an office hours on how the data collector works, and we talk about the historic collections on what you can and cannot collect and how the data collector works. If you visit the office hour event registration page, you'll find the link to the recap on the data collector. That's the most information we really have out there, and the training talks about it to some extent as well. But if it's there, just set it to the number of days you want, hit run on a subprod, and again, test the time. And if not, it's I think it's not there for a reason. We certainly always want to allow you to get the history if it's available. And in the historic job, it's not just the daily job going backwards, but we've excluded breakdowns that don't make sense, that we cannot collect historically. Like state is the best example. I can't tell you what state an incident was in 30 days ago, but I can tell you it was open. I actually can't tell you what assignment group it was, but I'll tell you the assignment group now. And generally speaking, historic collections, we go 30, 60, 90 days. We normally don't go further than that, because that gets me enough of a trend right now, and then we're going forward. And as I roll out a new content pack, I roll out a new process, it takes a few weeks or a month before everybody gets on board and is really using it. So, and particularly as I test it, we normally have enough history at that point that it's very valuable. But most of performance analytics is built forward. So turn it on. Once you know you want a content pack and things are going for, you are looking good, I would turn that on in production pretty soon. I can tweak it, but let's start that collection as soon as possible.
Yeah, the docs actually are pretty well, have pretty good information on historic collections as well, including a video here and there. So check that out as well. I just posted the link in the overall chat. So not in the Q&A, but in the overall chat.
And if you have any questions that come up for that, I'm not getting what I'm wanting or whatever comes in, post a question in the community. Make sure you add some screenshots of your indicator source, and your job, and somebody will probably point out how you get it to do what you want. There's lots of levers to pull to get what you want. So check out the documentation, check out that office hours, check out some of the other community posts, and you should be able to figure out what you need and what you can get and what you can't, and ask questions if you can't. We're always here to help. There is another question: is what is the correct logic to get daily metrics that pull based on the stated date range? Performance analytics should handle that. It depends on what the metrics are. So again, I cannot tell you how many incidents you had in pending 3 weeks ago, but I can tell you how many incidents you had. What the priority? We look at what the priorities are today. We handle that, but we're looking at the current data and counting it. So this is where the mantra dates, not states, comes in. If you have the dates, you can create your indicators to do that. But if you're looking at data that changes frequently, you don't want to collect it. And my approach is for things like priority and assignment group, it doesn't really matter who had it, because that data is only getting better. If I had a P3 that got escalated to a P1 and I say it was a P1, it's true. I mean, it was a P3 and then a P1. So there's some auditing that's not great. From an audit perspective, historical collection is not always perfect, but on a trajectory and understanding, what's really going on, it's pretty good. At an aggregate level, the historical collections are valuable, but we do want to build going forward. Performance analytics handles the date. So your indicator source says today, says give me the number of incidents today in state. Today is time shifted appropriately. So if I said collect from January 1st to January 1st to January 31st, the indicator source, performance analytics, handles the date transition of what today means. We go into that more depth in the office hours about the data collector, but what it does, I think, is documented well. You should have the docs. Take a look at that, and if you have more questions, and in particular if you have some issue about you're not getting what you want, ask us in 2 weeks or post a question in the community. It will greatly help if you put a screenshot of the indicator source and job, and then explain what you're getting and what you think you should be getting, and then we can help you understand where the discrepancy are, how you change it, or if that's not possible. Galen, I hope that answered your question. Okay, Tom, I'll hand it back over to you if you want to.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you again in 2 weeks, and hopefully next week at the launch broadcast event. So be sure to sign up on ServiceNow.com. Thanks, and have a great day.